Right now, someone has more power over you than you are willing to admit. Not your boss, not your rival, not the person who hurt you last year and still lives rent-free in your head. The truth is quieter than that and far more dangerous because it has been operating undetected since the day you were born, and it has never once asked your permission. You have been losing a war you did not know you were fighting. But what if you didn't have to lose it anymore? 2,000 years ago, a small circle of men discovered the exact architecture of that war, and more importantly, how to win it. These men were not soldiers. They were philosophers who understood something modern self-help has diluted into slogans. Real power is not loud, it is not owned, and it cannot be given to you by anyone else. It can only be built, brick by brick, from the inside. This is forbidden knowledge, in the sense that almost no one teaches it to you. Not in school, not even at home. You were taught to chase approval, to chase comfort, to chase applause, and never once taught the one skill that makes a man impossible to control. Today, that changes. Today you are learning 10 lessons that make you emotionally untouchable. Stay to the end, because lesson 10 is the one the others will be quietly building toward, and once you hear it, you will not be able to see your own reactions the same way again. Lesson 1. The war that ends before it ever starts. Here is an uncomfortable truth. You have already lost today, and the day has barely started. Not to your enemies, not even to your circumstances. You lost in a battle no one else even knew was happening, fought entirely inside your own skull and decided before your feet hit the floor this morning. Every insult that has ever wrecked your mood, every slight that hijacked your afternoon, every argument you replayed at 2 a.m., none of it was won or lost out there. It was won or lost in the half-second after the event, in the space most people never even know exists. But what if that half-second belonged to you? Marcus Aurelius commanded legions. He held more raw power than almost any man in history. And yet the war he fought every single day was not against barbarians at the border. It was against the tyrant inside his own mind, the one that wanted to label every setback a catastrophe before the facts had even arrived. He knew something most men never learn. The enemy does not have to defeat you. You can defeat yourself for him in seconds for free and hand him the victory before he lifts a finger. Think of your mind as a fortress. Every day, strangers hurl arrows at the gate, careless words, cold treatment, or small disrespects that cost them nothing to throw. Most men fling the gates wide open and let every arrow land exactly where it was aimed. The Stoic does not. He inspects the arrow before it ever reaches the wall. He asks, is this a threat, or is this simply noise wearing the costume of a threat? This is the first weapon of the emotionally untouchable man, the pause. Not weakness, not passivity. A trained, deliberate delay between the world's provocation and your response. And inside that delay lives every ounce of power you will ever need. Lose the pause and you lose the war before it begins. Master it, and you become the one thing the world was never prepared to face. A man who cannot be ambushed by his own mind. Lesson 2. The chain you cannot see. You are wearing chains right now and you cannot see them, because you forged every link yourself. Epictetus knew this better than any philosopher who ever lived, because he lived it in the most brutal way possible. Born a slave. His leg shattered by his own master, some accounts say deliberately, simply to test whether the young philosopher would flinch. He did not. And from that broken leg came one of the most dangerous ideas in human history. Dangerous to tyrants, dangerous to bullies, dangerous to anyone who has ever tried to control another person through fear. He said this: men are disturbed not by what happens to them, but by their opinion of what happens to them. Sit with that, because it dismantles the entire system the world uses to control you. The closed door, the cold reply, the insult from a stranger who will forget you exist by tomorrow. None of it carries pain built into it like a hidden blade. You manufacture the pain yourself, instantly, unconsciously, the moment you slap a judgment onto the raw event. Bad, unfair, humiliating. The event was neutral. The chain was your own invention. So here is the question that should unsettle you. How much of your suffering this year was real, and how much of it did you build with your own two hands and then blame on someone else? This is why the man who cannot be controlled terrifies the people who are used to controlling others. You cannot chain a man who refuses to accept the label you hand him. Call him a failure, and if he has not judged himself a failure, your words fall to the floor like static. Insult him, and if he has not agreed with the insult internally, you have simply made noise into empty air. The chain only works if he clamps it onto his own wrist. Refuse, and there is nothing left for anyone to hold on to. Lesson 3. The fortune you give away for free. You are being robbed right now, in broad daylight, and you are handing over the loot yourself with a smile on your face. There is something more valuable than money, more fragile than youth, and harder to recover than health itself. Every emperor who ever lived searched for it. Every philosopher tried to protect it like a vault, and every wise man eventually discovered the same brutal truth. Once it is gone, no fortune on earth can buy it back. That treasure is your attention. But what has it cost you today? The world has convinced you that your greatest possessions are the things you can hold. The house, the title, the number in your account. The Stoics knew better. They understood that your greatest possession is the direction of your own mind, because wherever your attention goes, your entire life quietly follows it, like a shadow that never lets go. Seneca warned that men guard their money like dragons guard gold, refusing to let a single coin slip through their fingers to a stranger, and yet those same men hand their attention over to anyone who asks for it, for free, without a second thought. A stranger's opinion, a notification, an argument that will not matter in a week, and yet somehow earns an entire evening of your one irreplaceable life. Here is the elite secret almost no one tells you. Attention is the only currency in existence that cannot be earned back once spent. You can lose a fortune and rebuild it. You cannot get back the hour you gave to a grudge, the morning you gave to doom scrolling, or the years some men give to chasing the approval of people who never once thought about them in return. Guard your attention like the way a king guards his treasury, because that is precisely what it is, and everyone around you already knows it, even if you don't. Lesson 4. The stranger wearing your own face. You have spent your entire life hunting an enemy in the wrong direction. You blamed the traffic. You blamed your rival. You blamed the people who wronged you, the circumstances that broke against you, the world that seemed determined to keep its boot on your neck. But what if the enemy was never any of them? What if the enemy has been standing exactly where you stand, wearing your own face, speaking in your own voice, so close to you that you never once suspected him? The greatest deception is not that this enemy exists. It is that you have mistaken his voice for your own for so long, you no longer know where he ends and you begin. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself before sunrise, reminding himself that today he would meet ungrateful people, deceitful people, difficult people, and that this was not a tragedy, but simple weather, expected and unremarkable. But the danger he feared far more than any external enemy was the possibility that he might become like them on the inside. That the tyrant in his own mind might quietly seize the throne while he was busy watching the borders for outside threats. This is the trick every impulse plays on you. It speaks in the first person. It does not say a wave of anger has arrived, observe it and let it pass. It says I am angry, and in that single collapsed sentence, an entire identity gets hijacked by a passing chemical storm that will not even remember itself in 20 minutes. Here is the shift that changes everything. The one almost no one is taught. You are not your first thought. You are not your first flinch. You are the one watching the flinch arrive. And the moment you see that clearly, you gain something the enemy cannot survive. Distance. Once you have distance, the enemy inside you loses his greatest weapon, which was always your blind agreement with him. Lesson 5. The man nothing can touch. Every person who has ever successfully provoked you did it for one reason, and it will sting to hear it. You left a hook hanging out where they could find it. Power has never belonged to the loudest voice in the room. It has never belonged to the fastest temper or the sharpest insult. Ask yourself honestly, who actually controls a room? The man shouting to be heard, or the man whose silence makes everyone else lower their voice without being asked? Cato the Younger was mocked, spat on, humiliated in public by men who wanted nothing more than to see him lose control in front of a crowd. He refused to give it to them. And in refusing, he did something far more devastating to his enemies than any insult could have accomplished. He proved, without saying a single word, that they had no power over him at all. His calm was not surrender, it was a public execution of their entire strategy. This is the part that will humble you if you let it. Every time you have exploded at an insult, you did not prove the insult wrong. You proved it correct, live, in front of an audience, by demonstrating that a stranger's cheap words were powerful enough to seize control of your face, your voice, and your dignity. for free. So here is the elite skill they never taught you. The man who has removed his own hooks cannot be caught, no matter how skillfully the line is cast. Becoming unprovocable is not about numbness. It is about starving your opponent of the one thing they actually came for, which was never the argument, your reaction. Refuse to hand it over, and you become something the world genuinely does not know how to fight. Lesson 6. The man with no leash to pull. Every leash that has ever been placed around a human neck was tied to the same anchor point, a need. Remove the need, and the leash falls to the floor, useless, with nothing left to hold on to. Ask yourself something uncomfortable. If the approval of the people around you vanished tomorrow, if the comfort you have grown used to disappeared, would you still know who you are? Or would you unravel? Diogenes watched a mouse scurry past him one day, with no home, no comfort, no anxious planning for tomorrow. And he realized something that should terrify anyone who has built their identity on possessions and approval. He had been living with more anxiety than a creature that owned nothing, simply because he had convinced himself he needed things the mouse had never once thought to want. In that moment, the man with nothing became freer than the empire builders who feared losing everything. This is the secret every manipulator depends on and prays you never learn. Anyone who needs approval too badly can be flattered into obedience. Anyone who fears loss can be threatened into silence. Anyone who craves comfort above all else has already named their price, whether they realize it or not. The market for controlling other people exists entirely because most people are walking around with an exposed need, and someone is always circling, waiting to exploit it. This is why the Stoics trained in voluntary hardship, sleeping cold though they could afford warmth, eating plainly though they could afford excess, not because suffering is noble, but because a man who has already survived going without cannot be threatened with going without ever again. He has tested the worst outcome and found it survivable. There is no leverage left for anyone to use against him. When you need nothing, you become something dangerous to anyone who has built their power on other people's dependence. Ungovernable. Lesson 7. The man who expects nothing cannot be betrayed. Here is a question that will cut deeper than it should. How many of your wounds were inflicted by the world, and how many were self-inflicted by a contract you wrote in your own head and never once asked reality to sign? You expected the friend to be loyal. You expected the work to be rewarded exactly when you wanted it, and exactly how you pictured it. And when the universe, which owes you nothing, failed to honor an agreement it never made, you called it betrayal. But what if it was never betrayal at all? What if it was simply the sound of your own expectation shattering against a world that was indifferent to it from the very beginning? Seneca trained himself in something almost no one practices today, deliberately imagining loss before it arrived, not to summon despair, but to strip the illusion of guarantee out of every plan before life could do it for him. He wrote that nothing should catch a prepared mind by surprise, that the wise man rehearses disaster the way a soldier rehearses an ambush, not because he expects to lose, but because he refuses to be caught unarmed if he does. This is not pessimism. This is a weapon hidden in plain sight, and almost no one is willing to pick it up because it requires admitting the universe was never obligated to you in the first place. But once you release the demand that life follow your script, something extraordinary happens. The sting disappears, not because the event changed, but because the gap between expectation and reality, the very thing that was cutting you, has closed. The man who expects nothing does not walk through life bitter. He walks through it lighter than everyone still dragging their unsigned contracts behind them, and nothing the world does to him can ever again be called betrayal, because he never handed the universe the paperwork to betray him with. Lesson 8. What is not yours will never hurt you. There is a line, invisible but absolute, running directly through the center of your life, and almost every wound you have ever carried exists because you forgot exactly where it sits. On one side there are your judgments, your work, your response, and your character. They are fully yours, untouchable by any outside force. On the other side there are other people's opinions, the outcomes of events, and the timing of things far beyond your reach. They are never yours, no matter how tightly your fingers have been wrapped around them. Epictetus, a man who owned nothing, not even his own body for most of his life, taught that suffering enters at precisely one doorway: the moment you claim ownership over something that was never yours to begin with. You did not simply want the promotion, you needed it. as though it already belonged to you before a decision was even made. And when it slipped away, it felt like theft, but nothing was ever stolen, because it had never been in your hand. Here is the elite question the philosophers asked before every disturbance, the one you are about to start asking yourself. Is this within my control? If yes, act completely, without hesitation and without apology. If no, release it completely, without guilt, because gripping tighter at something outside your control has never once changed the outcome, but has only ever exhausted the man doing the gripping. Picture an archer. He trains his form, his breath, his aim, with total mastery. He does not control the wind. A wise archer does not curse the gust that carries his arrow off course, because he understands the difference between his effort and the world's response to it. Learn that distinction, and you will discover that most of what has been hurting you was never yours to lose in the first place. Lesson 9. The silence that cannot be broken. They are waiting for you to explain yourself, waiting for the outrage, the defense, or the performance that proves their opinion of you actually mattered. What happens when you simply don't give it to them? Most people believe silence in the face of an insult means the insult landed, or that it means you lost. But watch closely, and you will see the opposite is almost always true. The compulsive need to correct every stranger's wrong opinion of you is itself a kind of surrender, a quiet confession that their judgment outranks your own peace. Socrates stood before a jury that would soon sentence him to death on charges built from lies. He did not beg. He did not perform outrage for the crowd. He answered with calm reason and let the outcome fall where it would, because his sense of who he was did not depend on 12 frightened men agreeing with him. That is a silence no threat could break, because it was never built on an audience's approval to begin with. Ask yourself what you are actually protecting the next time you feel the urge to defend your reputation against a stranger online, a rumor, or a misjudgment. Often, it is not the truth. It is your ego, demanding to be seen a certain way by people whose opinion will not matter to you in 12 months. The Stoics refused to burn their limited energy defending their name against every passing critic, because a reputation built on truth needs no defense, and one built on illusion cannot be rescued by arguing harder anyway. This is the final layer of armor, the one almost no one earns. Silence that is not empty, but full of a self-knowledge so complete that no outside noise can penetrate it. That kind of quiet cannot be provoked into becoming loud, because there is nothing left inside it for an insult to grab hold of. Lesson 10. The freedom that comes from loving what happens. Everything you have just learned was building toward this, the final door, and what lies behind it is more dangerous to your old identity than anything before it. The Stoics called it amor fati, the love of fate. Not gritted teeth tolerance of what happens to you. Not grim endurance, love. Ask yourself honestly, could you do that? Could you will every painful chapter of your life to happen again, exactly as it happened, without asking for a single detail to be different? Marcus Aurelius wrote that a blazing fire consumes whatever is thrown into it and grows taller because of it. A trained mind does the same with obstacles. Centuries later, Nietzsche, standing on the same philosophical ground the Stoics built, issued a brutal test. Imagine a demon telling you that you must live this exact life again, in the exact same order, the pain included, forever. Would it crush you, or would you rise to meet it? Most men spend their whole lives at war with what has already happened, replaying the mistake, resenting the delay, as if enough resentment could reach backward through time and rewrite it. It never does. That war produces only a second wound, self-inflicted, stacked directly on top of the first, entirely unnecessary and entirely optional. To love your fate is not to stop fighting for a better future. It is to stop demanding the past to apologize for being real. The setback becomes material. The heartbreak becomes education. The delay becomes timing. You are not yet wise enough to understand. This is where every lesson before it converges. The man who has won the invisible battle, broken the chain, and guarded his attention, arrives at. He finds that resignation was not waiting for him, but the fiercest freedom there is. Here is your challenge, and it starts before this video ends. The next time something happens today, an insult, a delay, or a disappointment, do not react. Pause. Ask the single question the philosophers asked for 2,000 years. Is this within my control? Then act, or release, and nothing else. Most people will scroll past this and change nothing by tomorrow. Prove you are not most people. Comment the number of the lesson that hit you the hardest, right now, before you lose the impulse. Because a lesson you do not act on is just a story you enjoyed for a few minutes. Subscribe if you intend to actually become this person, not just watch from a distance. The tyrant inside your mind has been running unchallenged for years. Today, for the first time, he has heard his name called out loud.